Welcome, Songtown. Clay Mills here. In today's episode, singer-songwriter Brian Davis stops by the studios to talk about his career as a songwriter and an artist. He's not only written hits for artists as huge as Lee Brice and Brantley Gilbert, Billboard toppers, he's also one of those rare cats that can write a great song, but can also tell you his approach and share his knowledge on songwriting. So I'm excited for you to get to meet Brian. Let's jump on in it.
Red leaves on the river, footprints in the sand. Cold walk in December, warming up your hands. Sundress on the front step, sun up by the lake. Blanket down in the backyard, lying wide awake. It's a memory I don't mess with. The girl I was the best with, the one I was obsessed with. No, you just don't get it. I'd fall right back with one slip. Always leave me helpless. Don't hate me, I can't help it. Gotta leave us where we left it. A memory I don't mess with. Ooh. Red leaves on the river, footprints in the sand. Cold walk in December, warming up your hands.
All right.
Yeah.
BD.
Dude, man, how are you, buddy?
Good, man. I don't know if I told you this, but the day that song came out,
Yeah.
first time I heard it, I called up one of your co-writers, Billy Montana.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, dude, this is a smash.
Oh, thank
And
you, man.
he was like, yeah, fingers crossed. And I don't think it took off right away, did it? Or,
No, it didn't.
but I knew it was going to take
Yeah,
off.
no, it was. Well, the funny thing is the song before it was such a smash. That one of them
Yeah.
girls, man, and so they were having trouble getting radio to get off of that to start this one. So we had to be patient, and which is a hard thing for when you're sitting on go like that to
Man.
not see it. Just so, but it was it did, man, it did amazing, and we're so grateful to be part of it. So,
Yeah. So that was, we were talking earlier, and you were talking about how songwriting has evolved into different. You have some days you set out to write for radio, some days maybe for streaming.
yeah.
So that was definitely a radio day.
Yeah, that was well. What's funny is I found, man, that if I think about the people first, it makes it easy because then the connection is there, right? And then try to frame that into what radio would want to play, And so, I mean, when we wrote it a lot like you just heard it, but then Lee got in the studio with it, and he's such a great. He and Ben Glover and Kyle are such great producers, and so they framed it into what radio would want to grind on and make it a thing out of. So the groove started way past us writing it. We were just writing something we loved, and we knew the melody was amazing. We just felt like it was just God went, here you go, boys, kind of moment, and we were just grateful to be part of it. But then seeing it take shape, and then here on the radio and going, oh, now I see we could without that groove, all those little cool things that the musicians, all that stuff, man, just came together, and now we get to say we had another number one. So,
Yeah.
which we're always grateful for.
Man, take us back to the day that you started writing that song, because from what I understand, it wasn't all written in one day. But just tell me the whole process.
So I mean, you've killed it too. So you understand like the game, but it's like I'm always listening to conversations. I'm always writing ideas down in my phone, and so Lee and I were out and
Lee Brice.
Yeah, Lee Brice. Yes, yeah. Lee Brice and I were out, and we'd worked on a few things. It just didn't really have anything we thought was. We had a couple things we were like, that's pretty cool, but we don't know, And so we were on the way back in, and I was just digging. At this point, I'm going deep, and I mean 2 years deep in my phone on ideas, and I just see this one, and I go, oh, I forgot about this, and so oh, dude, I got this idea, man, and I said. I was just like, it's just kind of, I got this little piece of, I don't know if it's anything yet or not, but I was like, that's a memory I don't mess with. Like, I just had this little thing, and he was like, just thought, if you ever spend any time with Lee, he goes, oh, dude, what? And so he's like, do it again. So I said it again or whatever. And then he was like, that's a single on my next record. And I'm like, you
before you'd even written it.
But that's the kind of thing. He's a vision guy. So for him, he was like, oh, I see how this could work. And so then we kind of carved out a chorus on it, and then we parted ways. We got back to town, and so then a year later, I totally forget about it, and Lee forgets about it, and then so
this is a year
after
later. The first 2 years you had the idea,
yes,
and then a year later after you wrote a chorus,
yes. As crazy as that sounds, man, and that kind of got me to a point which I think if we would have done it any other way, we would have missed it. Like honestly, I feel like the way it went down was just how it was supposed to go down, but again, got busy, we forgot about it for a year. And honestly, I'm out with Lee doing a lot more work, man. We're out writing a ton all the time, but it just never surfaced again. And then we were down in Texas, and Billy and we're out on the road with him, and Billy Montana and I, and we had been working on stuff, and we had some cool things. But then Lee, and this is the fourth show he had been. I mean, if you see a Lee show, man, he goes after it, man. He doesn't leave anything in the case, and so this is night 4 of a run, and he comes back on the bus, and Billy was like, I don't know if Billy was doing it, but Lee and I were standing by the sink area, and Lee was like, hey, dude, we should do tonight since Billy's here. And I was like, and I don't even know, because I had not thought about it, but I was like, finish that memory thing? And he was like, yes. And so then he goes over to Billy and goes, Billy, just say thank you. He starts ribbing him. You know how he is. Like, so then Billy's like, what? And he was like, well, we got this chorus, man. And so we played the chorus for him, and it still wasn't arranged correct yet. So,
right.
But then, so we played what we had as the chorus at the time, and Billy was like, oh, I can't get on that, man. You guys have already got that. And we're like, no, man, we need you on this. And so he did, and you've heard Billy's story probably, but Billy's like, they brought this chorus to me that was a monster chorus. And so I was like, I can't mess this up. And so he goes over in the corner, like of the bus, we're in the front lounge of the bus, rolling down the road. And meanwhile, me and Lee are going back and forth on, hey, dude, do you think it should be, we were just reorganizing the lines left and right on the chorus, just trying to make the right order out of it. And they sounded good several different ways. So we were kind of over there just like kind of bickering back and forth with each other, like, dude, I think it's this, I think it's that, whatever. And then Billy comes and interrupts us kind of with this computer. And he goes, hey, guys, I think maybe this could be like verse 1 maybe. And then Lee, again, like Lee is, I love this dude, man. But he's like, oh, really? You got the verse? Okay, let me see it. What would he go like? And he picks his guitar and he goes like red leaves on the river, like that. Footsteps, he's just kind of messing with him, and he's like, yeah, kind of exactly like that. And then it just turned into, and then we got the second verse done, talked about a bridge, and we're like, I don't know, man, what if we did one? What would it be like? And then we wound knocking it all out that night, and then spent till 5 or 6 in the morning putting the demo together on it, and then shortly after, Lee went in, cut it, and then singled it, and here we are.
So a year later, he still remembered that he said it was going to be a single.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. Well, I'll tell you, we're just finishing up his project right now, and he's made the same comment about several off of the record that we've got coming up, the same kind of way. And I'm just like, hey, dude, I've already seen the proof, so I believe you. And if it doesn't happen, that's cool too. Yeah. I understand, but like, he's already been like, this is, so I'm like, okay, and they're now sitting up in that slot, in that single category. So we'll see. But he's a great human being, man, and it's so nice to work with guys who can sing like he does. You know what I mean? He can deliver a song, even just him and an acoustic. He's about to go on. Actually, he's going on a tour, just him and a guitar. Wow. For like January, February of this year of 24, and I think I'm gonna sneak out just from a selfish perspective, just go sit in the crowd and listen. You know what I mean? Be on the bus, but I'll go out in the crowd and listen because he's so great. But yeah, so.
That song, when I first heard it, one thing that struck me, and later I asked Billy, and Billy goes, yeah, I was just channeling Bob Dylan. But the verse starts out kind of poetic, like red leaves on a river. Like it was like, do you ever think about that stuff when you're writing? Like, I got to keep it conversational, or can you get poetic, or what goes through your mind when you're writing? Because we have a lot of aspiring writers out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, well, for me, conversation first. I mean, I think the conversation has to be there. If you can't communicate the point across, then you miss anyway. So for
Right.
me, it starts there, but then it moves into how colorful can I make those lines? How much alliteration can I put in those lines? How many internal rhymes can I bust up? You know,
Right.
all of those pieces of the puzzle start to show up after I kind of have a vision of the conversation, you know. And so, like there's a song I wrote yesterday. Yesterday was a radio day for me. We kind of that's like talking about like some days I write for streaming, sometimes I write for radio. For radio, it just kind of depends on the day. But yesterday was a radio day, and the idea that came up was a very common phrase idea, which I love those. That's one of my favorite things because then you can take that common idea and you can put just a little different slant on it. You know what I mean? And so we
Mhm.
managed to do that. But when it got to the verses had a lot of similar like red leaves on the river, kind of interesting like pieces of furniture that are
Right.
situated to get you to the point. You know, and so those are kind of my favorite. But if you can't get the point across, you know the real poetic stuff, you know, kind of sometimes can get in the way of that. So for me, I'm more of a meat and potatoes kind of guy when it comes down to it. But I'll also go back and fine tooth the lyric, you know, 100 times to
Mhm.
make sure that first and foremost that did you get the causes and the ands and the buts, all that stuff out of there if you can, or you know,
Yeah,
or
clean it up.
appropriately set up, right? And then but then go back and go, man, is that line great? Or could it be better? You know what I mean? And so I kind of tweak on stuff, and in my brain, I mean, you're a lot like me, I think, in regard to this. Or I'm probably a lot like you, I should say, but in regard to, I'm always tweaking on it until it's done, until it's on the radio, or until it's out of my hands totally, where I can't do anything else with it or about it. At that point, like so again, I was at Lee's studio yesterday, kind of going over a thing, and I was like, hey, bro, I was thinking about this, and he was in the middle of doing the vocal, and I was like, hey, I was thinking about this, man. You know, how do you feel about if we just I know it's going to be just a small change, but man, it could be so big to to a certain demographic if they hear it
Mhm.
this way versus that way, you know. And he's like, you know what? Okay, cool. So it just I don't know. For me, I'm always tweaking on it, but I
And
do.
you're always thinking about, like you were saying earlier, the audience, because really a song is just a conversation between the singer and the audience.
That's it, man. That's
And
it.
you know,
So
if you don't have that in your mind as you're
mhm.
writing, then you know, how are you gonna make that conversation real, you
Yeah,
know?
and I think too, like I mean, I'm a country boy. I grew up in Carolina, so for me, it's pretty easy for me to get on my level of country music because I feel like I'm writing for like I always said when I was touring, like most people as an artist, your job is to kind of hold a giant mirror up in in front of the crowd, in front of you, but in front of the crowd, so the crowd can just hear your music and it reflects right back to them exactly what they are. That was the way I kind of looked at that, but I always felt like just because of what I do for a living, I feel like I didn't have to hold a mirror. I could just stand there because what I am is what they are. You know what I mean? I always felt like it was just such a connected moment, and so I always defer to them 100% of the time. And so even when we toured as much as we did, I use that as like research time.
Yeah.
You know, because I would take ideas and take I'd test songs out in a way that was real time. You know, feedback
Right.
and they didn't know they were doing that. They were just enjoying the night. But to me, I'm going, okay. And there's a percentage of you hear a song for the first time, you may only grab a few nuggets out of it, but the chorus is always. But if you can get the chorus, you haven't seen the chorus back the second time,
Right.
then you got them. You
Yeah.
got that. That song is going to be a mainstay in the world. And so I try to craft choruses a lot like that, where it's so rhymey, so hooky, melodically, you know, or how concept wise to where it literally earworms into their brain. And by the second time, they may not know every word, but they're out there going, "Nah," you know,
Yeah.
they're already wanting to get on board with it. So by the time they hear it a second time, you know, when they get out, they get it in their car or whatever in their truck and listen to it, they'll be right there with us next time we come to that town. You know what I mean? And that
Yeah.
was kind of the thing. And so, but yeah, it's a writing is an interesting thing, but it really boils down to a conversation,
Yeah.
and then you put a great melody on it, I think. But
Yeah. And guys, he's not saying that he writes what the audience wants to hear. He's saying that he keeps them in mind. But what I think your ultimate goal is, or at least it is for me as a writer, is you have an emotion inside of you and you want to say it in the way that the audience feels the same thing you're
yes,
saying.
yes,
You're not just saying any old words to make them feel something. You're
no,
you're trying to get what's in your own heart and make them feel that.
yes,
And so you have to work on both sides of the equation. And I think a
agreed.
lot of writers just get lost in this, like it's like a diary that they're just vomiting out.
Yeah,
you
no,
know,
no.
and that's not going to engage the audience.
No, the authenticity of it is the difference every time. And you know when you're doing I know, I've got like a set kind of core artist group that I know I serve well. So I couldn't go like for me, I couldn't go write songs for a Broadway play because I don't understand. That's not, and that's nothing against that. That's just not my thing. That's not where I am. So I know what I do well, and I do that.
Right.
And I make sure that it is that I'm versed in what I'm discussing.
But if Lee Brice was to get a Broadway show,
Man, it
and
would
he
be the
says,
worst Broadway show
we
you-
have got to, he's going to do a one-man show on Broadway about country music.
Oh, then
yeah.
Yeah, then we may have a shot at least,
Broadway
to a
brother.
degree, but yes,
But you would still be doing what you knew.
exactly,
And yeah.
that's a big piece of it, man. And again, I can't stress enough just the authenticity of doing. I mean, everybody has a lane, you know, and I don't. I look at my musical talent. I look at my vocabulary, my passionate about, and I write that stuff, you know what I mean? And I know there's a demographic for that, you know, just like there's a rock demographic that people just love, you know, and like a Airbnb. I mean, all those things. There's all those pieces of the puzzle that, and you could kind of, there's some guys who can, I think, you know, really cover a lot of genres. And so, but I think it starts with you and your communicativeness and your ability to be authentic in how you operate that, you know?
Yeah.
So
Good communication works, I think, in any genre.
yeah.
Being authentic.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, like, for years, Carlos Santana would play on different people's albums, all different styles of music.
Oh,
But
yeah.
he said he always walked in, he's like, my job's to figure out how to be Carlos in this room today.
Yep.
You know, he's
Well
not
done.
trying to go, oh, they're R&B, they're going to want to hear this. Like,
Yeah.
he's like, how can I put myself into the conversation?
Well done. Well said.
Yeah.
I think that, and I think one other thing I was thinking about a moment ago is like, once I get like a thing together, then I try to simplify it as much as I can. I try to get it down to as like simple of a concept as possible. And then, because that's the thing too, is our attention span nowadays and the listeners' attention spans are so small. Like I was actually just pouring through this morning. I had like a little routine in the morning, but I was just kind of going through New Boots on Spotify, just listening, man. And you know, 15 seconds of a song. And then there's a couple of songs, man, that made me go, I can't stop it at 15 seconds. But I went through several to get to those types, you know, and it was just like, okay. But that's the thing, man. And our listeners are no different than that. Our listeners are just click, click, click until they, you know what I mean? That's just how they operate, you know, because they're just, all they're doing is sometimes it's just mindless scrolling. Sometimes they're just listening mindlessly. But really, man, to get them to engage is the difference. And to stand out in a literally a whole void of just noise a lot of times, you know, is really a difficult thing to do, but simplicity and repetition in certain areas can make that happen too. So
Yeah, I feel like there's 100,000 songs a day uploaded to Spotify.
at least.
So that's a lot of noise.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
and so what you're saying is you have to figure out ways to stand out and be better than that noise.
Yep.
And because at the end of the day, if it's not a great song, it's going to be hard for an artist to cut through all that.
It really is, man. And there's all the tricks of the trade when it comes to production, but ultimately, man, if that message doesn't, like you mentioned, hit from a heart to a heart, you know, I talk about there's head-to-head songs and heart-to-heart songs, you know what I mean? And the head-to-head songs are the ones that you hear and you're like, okay, that was interesting. But then the heart-to-heart songs are the ones that you can't not listen to.
You feel
That's a big difference, yeah. So
yeah, like Memory I Don't Mess With. Like that's what got me is that chorus. It was just it was said the way that I would want to say it if I was saying that. Like it was just I
that's
love
a huge compliment.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you.
It was I called it.
I'm glad you did.
I said, Billy,
We-
this is going to be number one, Billy.
We need all of the calling it we can get, man, from you.
I don't have any power, but I had a feeling.
Oh, man.
I got 4 questions I want to
Yeah.
ask you,
Go ahead.
and we'll pretend it's like let's say the last 30 seconds of a national
Okay.
championship game, so you
Okay.
don't have time to think.
Go. All right.
Let me just pull them up here.
Let's go.
Okay. First song that pops into your head?
Okay.
Best well-crafted song of all time.
The House That Built Me.
Best guilty pleasure song of all time.
Ooh, Time After Time.
Ah.
You wouldn't think that, right?
Did you know Miles Davis recorded that song?
I didn't. I got to chase that down now. I did not know
With
that.
John Scofield on guitar. So I'm a little jazz geek.
Wow.
So, favorite song you've written? That's hard. I know.
Probably One Hell of an Amen.
Oh, okay. And best advice for an aspiring songwriter?
No doesn't mean no. It means not yes yet.
Okay. So keep knocking.
Yeah.
All right. Pleasure, buddy.
Dude, thank you for having me, man, as always, brother.